You want to know what betrayal feels like? Not from an enemy, from your own blood, your own father, your own sister. I served my country for 25 years, fought battles no one ever saw. And when I came home, they'd erased me, locked me out of my house, stole my name, and turned my past into their business plan. But this isn't just a story about loss. It's about what happens when a soldier stops following orders and starts asking questions. If you want to hear how it all unfolds, stay with me. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments. Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be your worst enemy? Here, we tell stories about ordinary people with extraordinary scars. And this one? It cuts deep. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 47 years old, and 2 weeks ago, I came home. Home. It's such a fragile word. In the military, home is the one word they say with both hope and fear. It means comfort, but also distance. I spent 25 years working in the shadows of the Cyber Command, hunting digital ghosts, exposing threats that could cripple a country, protecting people who would never know my name. I was a major when I retired. Clean record, commendations, operations I can't even talk about unless the room is soundproofed and the badges are cleared. I wasn't decorated with medals. I was trusted with silence, and I thought that would be enough. Seattle looked smaller than I remembered. The fog hung low, like a secret the city didn't want to share. I drove a rental. My name still matched my license, even if the world around me didn't. I took the old highway, let the trees lean in like they recognized me. I turned down the street I once called mine, and there it was, the house. Same white paint with that bluish tint, same porch swing on the left. The front light was off. Strange for early evening, but not alarming. I walked up the steps. I still knew exactly where they creaked. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I knocked. Still nothing. Just as I reached for the doorknob, it didn't turn. Locked. Which wouldn't have been strange, except I had a key. I'd always had a key. I tried it. It didn't fit. They had changed the locks. The porch light flickered on suddenly. Motion sensor. And then I saw the black dome camera tucked under the roof eave. New. High-end. Not the kind you install for safety, but the kind you use when you're expecting something. Or someone. There was a beep. Then a small voice came through the intercom I hadn't noticed before. Please leave. My breath caught. Melissa? Silence. I stepped closer. Melissa, it's me. It's Evelyn. Another beep. You're not allowed here anymore. The voice was hers. My younger sister's. Same pitch, but colder. Like she'd grown armor around every vowel. I don't understand, I said. I just want to talk to Dad. There was a long pause. And then the final blow. Dad doesn't want to see you, and this is private property. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. The intercom clicked off. I stood there in front of the door I'd painted with my father when I was 15. The door I used to come through with bruised knees and secret smiles and letters from boot camp. The door that used to open before I could even knock. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, that there had been some mistake, some miscommunication. But I knew better. The locks were changed. The cameras were watching. The voice wasn't panicked. It was prepared. They had been expecting me. I spent that night in a cheap motel off the freeway, the kind where the vending machine hums louder than the TV and the front desk clerk doesn't make eye contact. I didn't sleep. I scrolled through old emails from Melissa. The last one was over 5 years ago. A Christmas message with a blurry photo of her and Dad. No warmth in the words. Just obligation. I opened my banking app. Frozen. Both personal accounts. I checked my old safety deposit records. Canceled. My name had vanished from a property trust I was legally part of, one I'd signed before deployment. The name on the new paperwork? Melissa Hart. And underneath hers, in dry official ink, Richard E. Hart. My father. That was when the first question finally broke through my military-trained calm. What the hell happened while I was gone? Morning came gray and flat. Light filtered through the dusty motel blinds like it didn't want to be there. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, still wearing yesterday's clothes. One boot off, one boot on, as if I'd paused mid-action and forgotten why. A voicemail blinked on my burner phone. Unknown number. I played it. A robotic voice. This message is for Evelyn Hart. You are hereby notified that you are trespassing on privately held property. All rights have been revoked, and legal enforcement is in process. You are advised to cease any contact with current residents or face legal action. No signature, no name, just pressure, wrapped in legality. Someone was trying to bury me under paperwork before I could even stand. I opened my duffel. A few civilian clothes, my old army laptop, a copy of my discharge papers. Everything else was back in storage in Virginia. I hadn't thought I'd need more. I thought I was coming home. I stared at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. The lines on my face were deeper than I remembered. My eyes, usually steady, looked unsettled. I tried to recall the last time someone hugged me, really hugged me. Maybe Germany, 6 months ago, when we shut down that offshore network. Maybe never. I needed answers. And not from strangers behind security cameras. I opened an encrypted browser and started digging. First, the Hart Family Trust. Public records had changed just 8 months ago. Melissa had become the sole active trustee. I was listed as inactive due to absence, no legal justification provided. Then, my father, Richard E. Hart, once a respected defense contractor in the early 2000s. He'd retired 5 years ago, citing health complications, but his name was still popping up in small business filings across the Pacific Northwest, LLCs, nonprofits, property acquisitions. It looked clean, too clean. Until I checked a small charity Melissa managed, New Leaf Rehabilitation Initiative. It had received over $2.3 million in federal grants over the past 3 years. The supposed headquarters? An empty office suite above a payday loan store. No staff, no photos, no public-facing activity, just a shell. That's when I picked up my phone and dialed the one number I hadn't used in years. It rang twice. A gravelly voice answered. This line better not be compromised. I almost smiled. Hi, Tom. There was a pause. Then, Evelyn? Yeah. You sound like hell. I've had better weeks. Are you in trouble? Not yet, I said. But I think my family might be. Thomas Blake had been one of the few people I trusted during my career. We met during a joint cyber intelligence op in Okinawa. He was NSA then, now a private attorney with a taste for hard cases and even harder whiskey. We met 2 hours later at a diner off Rainier Avenue. He looked older, salt and pepper beard, thick-rimmed glasses, leather coat worn at the collar. But his eyes were still sharp, still suspicious. He slid into the booth across from me. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him everything. The house, the lock, the voice on the intercom, the erased inheritance, the voicemail, the fake charity, the trust documents. He didn't take notes. He just listened, eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, he tapped a knuckle on the table. You said they used your name on documents? Yes. Contract forms, at least one grant application. I never signed anything. And you're certain your signature wasn't forged before? I don't know, I admitted. I never checked. I didn't think I had to check on my own family. Tom looked out the window, jaw clenched. I had a case like this last year, he said. Old military guy. Family siphoned off his benefits using power of attorney while he was deployed. Nobody noticed for years. They cleaned him out. And what happened to him? Nothing. He died before the court date. Stroke. Probably from the stress. I looked down at the untouched coffee in front of me. My hands were trembling slightly. What do you want to do, Evelyn? I want the truth. I want to know why they erased me. And I want it on record. He nodded slowly. All right. Then we do this the right way. Quietly, at first. We don't knock on doors. We lift up the carpet and see what's wriggling underneath. He reached into his coat and pulled out a black folder, sealed in plastic. Here's what I need, he said. List of every location your name ever appeared officially in the last 10 years. Banks, property, employment, and anything Melissa was involved with in your absence. We're going to cross-reference timelines. I took the folder. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, he said, that someone didn't just want to steal from you. They needed your silence. My stomach turned. Needed it. Why? Tom leaned in. Because your name wasn't just erased, Evelyn. It was weaponized. There's a moment, just before you launch an op, when everything slows down. A final breath. A flicker of doubt. And then, clarity. That's what I felt 3 days later, sitting in the back seat of Tom's beat-up Jeep, staring through binoculars at a building I used to call a charity office. The sign out front said, New Leaf Rehabilitation Initiative. The windows were dark. The parking lot was empty. The buzzer at the front door rang to no one. But the mailbox, that was full. And not with donation letters. With invoices. Bulk. Thick envelopes marked urgent, federal, payment due. What do you see? Tom asked, chewing a toothpick. No clients, no receptionist, but someone still collecting checks. He tapped something into his tablet. Registered agent is a firm in Delaware. Classic shell move. Melissa's name doesn't appear anywhere, not directly. But he slid the screen toward me. A list of routing numbers. The grant money was deposited here, then moved through 2 layers of nonprofits. Guess where it ended up? I stared at the final entry. RH Consulting Group, LLC. Owner, Richard E. Hart. My father. My pulse slowed. Tom leaned back, looking at me. They didn't just cut you out. They used you. Used your military record, your clearances, your image, to give these charities legitimacy. You were the veteran face on the paperwork. The poster soldier who never gave interviews. Conveniently overseas for most of it. I sat back against the headrest. The silence inside me was loud. Every mission I'd served. Every protocol I'd memorized. Every sacrifice I'd made. And here it was, twisted into a disguise for fraud. Why now? I finally asked. Why erase me now, if I was useful? Because you came home, Tom said simply. Later that night, I sat alone in my motel room, lit only by the blue glow of a laptop screen. I pulled up an old family photo, me, Melissa, and our father. I'd been in uniform. Melissa had her college hoodie on. Dad had his hand on my shoulder. I stared at that hand. And suddenly something came back. A memory I hadn't thought about in years. A call, 8 years ago, when I was stationed in Stuttgart. Melissa had asked if I could send over my DD-214, the discharge form. She said it was for some vet-friendly loan the family trust was applying for. She'd sounded casual, harmless. I'd sent it without thinking. It hadn't even crossed my mind to question her. I opened the photo in editing software, zoomed in. My uniform, name tag visible, medals, rank, badges. Enough detail to create an identity packet. They hadn't just borrowed my name. They'd built a paper soldier. The next day, Tom arranged a meeting with someone he said could get things moving. We drove out past Tacoma, where the trees got thicker and the houses more expensive. The woman waiting for us wore a dark blazer, boots, and carried a badge tucked just low enough to flash only when she wanted it to. "Agent Gina Lawrence," she said, shaking my hand. "Financial Crimes Division. We've heard your name." I froze. "What does that mean?" She glanced at Tom, then back at me. "It means your name is on several documents flagged in federal audits. It doesn't mean you're under investigation, yet. But you might be a person of interest, depending on what we find." I felt my throat tighten. But I didn't sign anything. "I believe you," she said. "That's why I'm here." She opened a folder and laid out a series of screenshots. Government contracts, federal payouts, medical supply invoices, tax credits, all of them connected to veterans, all signed, supposedly, by Evelyn Hart. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "Years," she said. "Maybe more. Whoever's running this is careful. They don't pull too much at once. They spread it across different programs, agencies, timelines. Smart laundering." Tom pointed to a particular document. "This signature, can you confirm it's hers?" "No," I said. "It's not even close." Gina nodded. "That helps." She looked at me. Her tone shifted slightly. "There's one thing you need to know," she said. 2 weeks ago, we intercepted a flagged transfer from RH Consulting Group. $500,000. It was wired to a private security firm in Nevada, one that's since vanished. No trace. I frowned. "What kind of firm?" She hesitated. "The kind that doesn't ask questions and doesn't file tax returns." Tom said what I was thinking. "They're cleaning house." Gina nodded grimly. "And if your family thinks you're going to start pulling threads, they may not wait around to see what unravels." Back at the motel that night, I found myself staring at the doorknob. Simple, silver, unremarkable. But I checked it 3 times, clicked it twice, propped a chair against it anyway. Habit. When I finally lay down, I stared at the ceiling and whispered a name I hadn't said in years. "Dad," I said quietly. "What did you do?" The knock came at 3:17 a.m. 3 short raps. Pause. 2 more. No voice. I was awake already. Something had pulled me out of a shallow dream. Maybe instinct. Maybe the weight of silence pressing too hard on the room. My boots were on in seconds. I crossed to the door soundlessly, pistol in hand. Standard issue Glock, tucked under my mattress out of old habit. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. Then a flicker of motion. Someone slipping out of view to the right. Fast. Too smooth for a drunk. Too quiet for coincidence. I dropped to a crouch and moved to the window, cracked it open an inch, letting the cold rush in. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed, casting long shadows across the asphalt. That's when I saw it. A man in a hoodie, back to me, leaning over my Jeep. No tag, no plate, just a black backpack, something metallic in his left hand. I threw the door open. He spun, too late. "Don't move," I snapped, weapon drawn. He froze. We stared at each other for a beat. He was young, maybe 25, pale, with wireframe glasses. Not a thug. Not even a professional. "Turn around, hands up." He did. That's when I noticed the object in his hand wasn't a weapon. It was a tracker. A magnetic one, designed to be slapped under a vehicle. He wasn't here to hurt me. He was here to find out where I'd go next. By the time police arrived, he was long gone. Spooked by the confrontation, he'd bolted between buildings, vanished into a residential street where the cruisers wouldn't follow without cause. But I had his face, and more importantly, his gear. Tom picked me up 20 minutes later. I tossed the backpack into his trunk. We drove in silence until we hit I-5. "Talk to me," he said finally. I told him everything. Tom didn't say a word until I got to the part about the tracker. Then, "They're watching you. Maybe more." We pulled over at a rest stop and checked the contents of the bag. There was another tracker, a burner phone, a folded note with 2 lines. RH trusts silence. Don't make noise. No signature. Just initials printed in red ink at the corner. MH Melissa. She was warning me, or threatening me. Possibly both. The line between them had been blurry for years. Tom lit a cigarette, eyes fixed on the horizon. This isn't just fraud anymore. It's operations, surveillance, movement tracking, intimidation. Someone's activating assets to make sure you stop digging. I stared out across the dark trees, heart pounding in a quiet, slow rhythm. This wasn't just family betrayal. This was something built, structured, layered, a machine. And I'd only seen the edge of it. The next day, we went back to the records. Tom had a guy, a retired IRS analyst named Nolan, who could run deeper audits without triggering alerts. Nolan spoke in mutters, drank 4 coffees in an hour, and never took off his gloves. "There's more here than you're ready for," he said at one point, not looking up from his laptop. These aren't just nonprofits funneling grant money, they're placing strategic bids on defense contracts, real ones, some with government partnerships. Tom leaned in. How big? Big enough to matter. Millions, not thousands. Someone on the inside is greenlighting this. Could be procurement. Could be someone in veteran services. But they're not amateurs. He spun the screen toward me. There's one pattern that keeps showing up. Small consulting firms, mostly medical supply or logistics, that vanish within 18 months. Guess whose name is used on 3 of them? My throat went dry. Mine, I said. Nolan nodded. And on 2 of them. Your sister's. That night, I parked 3 blocks from the house I used to call home. Lights were on upstairs. Someone, probably my father, was pacing the window, talking on the phone. The front lawn was perfectly trimmed. The porch light buzzed softly. The American flag we'd raised together 25 years ago still fluttered in the same holder. Everything looked the same, but the foundation had rotted. I walked up to the gate. Didn't cross it. Just stood there. Let myself be seen. And eventually, I was. The curtain on the 2nd floor shifted. A shadow stilled behind it. Then nothing. No movement. No voice. Just the weight of someone watching me back. Back in the motel, I opened my encrypted laptop and pulled up my own military personnel file. The full one. Not the public service record. The classified version. I still had clearance high enough to access my own archive. I needed to remember something. Something from before all of this. An operation in Romania. A covert cleanup in Djibouti. A classified black site server recovered in Nevada. I traced through notes and personnel overlaps. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, until I found it. RH contract. 18274A. A $10 million security consulting award, funneled through a shell company in Nevada. The one Agent Lawrence had mentioned. The one that had vanished. And listed on the proposal as the technical supervisor, Evelyn Hart. But I had never been there. Never approved that contract. Never even heard of that operation. I stared at the page, a knot forming in my chest. This wasn't just family theft. This wasn't just money laundering. This was military-grade impersonation. At scale. For profit. And if it had gone wrong, if anything had happened in my name, on foreign soil, then I wasn't just a victim. I was a liability. The room felt smaller now. I sat cross-legged on the motel floor, files spread around me like shrapnel. Pages, screenshots, burner phones, torn printouts. The evidence was piling up, but so were the implications. If what I'd found was real, if a contract bearing my name had gone operational, there were only 2 possibilities. Either my signature had triggered an illegal deployment overseas, or it had been used as cover for something much worse. My mind started racing. I pulled up the coordinates from the RH contract NAR18274A, desert region. No GPS signature from Standard Ops. It was listed under a civilian transport security exercise in Nevada. But that was just the smoke. The metadata on the contract linked to an old logistics account I hadn't touched in over a decade, one that only 3 people had ever known about. One of them was dead. The second was me. The third. I picked up my phone and called Gina. "Lawrence," she answered. "It's me, Evelyn. We have a problem." We met an hour later in an underground parking garage. No cameras, no signal. The moment she stepped out of her car, I saw it in her face. She already knew. "You ran it, didn't you?" I asked. She nodded once. We traced the account to a military subcontractor flagged in 2 European investigations, one in Moldova, one in Syria. Same year. "Moldova," I whispered. "That was an op I almost got sent on, before I was reassigned to Langley." "Exactly," she said. "Because someone used your name and credentials, on paper, to go instead." I leaned against the concrete pillar, trying to hold on to something steady. "They impersonated me on active fieldwork," I said flatly. Gina's voice was calm. "It gets worse." She handed me a file folder. Inside were 2 photographs, a white truck, bullet holes in the windshield, a collapsed satellite dish nearby, and a body. The image had been censored, the face blurred. But I didn't need to see it. I could tell from the equipment, the uniform, the angle of collapse. "American?" "No," she said. "But the contractor that hired him billed it through a U.S. Intel shell corporation. The name on the insurance waiver?" She didn't have to say it. "Evelyn Hart." I closed my eyes. There it was. The cost. "They've been building a shadow version of you," she said quietly. "One that signs, approves, vanishes. They don't just want your identity, they want your credibility, your reputation, your silence." I looked at her. "What happens now?" Gina exhaled slowly. "Now we go loud. You ready for that?" "No," I said. "But do it anyway." By the time I returned to my motel, the lights were off. No street traffic. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was staged. I paused in the hallway. Listened. A scuff. A breath. Then, a soft creak from inside my room. Someone was there. I stepped back, reached for my weapon. But before I could draw, the door opened from the inside, and Melissa stepped out. She looked different. Harder. Lips tight, hair pinned back, black coat that fit her like armor. "Close the door," she said softly. "We don't have much time." I didn't move. "You have 5 seconds before I scream," I warned her. She rolled her eyes. "You think I came here to hurt you? I'm the only one who hasn't tried yet." Against every instinct I had, I followed her inside. The room was just as I'd left it, except for the envelope sitting on the bed. She nodded toward it. "That's everything you're looking for. Bank accounts, authorizations, shell contracts, Dad's full involvement. It's all there." I stared at her. "Why now?" She looked away, jaw twitching. "Because you're not supposed to be here," she said. "You were supposed to stay overseas. You were the ghost. The name we borrowed. The soldier sister nobody saw. And when I came home?" Her eyes flicked to mine, cold and distant. "You became a risk." She sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly smaller. "I didn't want this," she muttered. "Dad. He said it was temporary, that it was for the family, that no one was getting hurt." "But people did," I said. "I know." Her voice cracked for the first time, and for just a second, she didn't look like the woman who'd threatened me over intercoms or sent men to track me. She looked like my sister again. The girl who used to build tree forts with me in the backyard. the one who waited for letters when I was deployed. "What are you trying to do now?" I asked. She stood, back straight, no tears. "I'm giving you the files," she said. "But that's it. After tonight, I disappear. I have a way out. A flight. A new name. And Dad? He won't run. He's too arrogant." I looked down at the envelope, then back at her. "You'll testify?" "No," she said. "But I won't stop you." And then she was gone. I stayed in the room for another hour staring at that envelope. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because once I did, there'd be no going back. No more questions. No more shadows. Just the truth. And the fallout it would bring. The courthouse wasn't as imposing as I remembered. A squat white building, faded columns, chipped stairs. Outside, reporters clustered in small packs, their breath visible in the cold morning air. I walked past them in silence. Black suit, hair tied back, no badge, no weapon. But still, every step felt like war. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Tom met me at the entrance to the hearing room, a folder tucked under his arm. His tie was crooked. His jaw was locked. "They're already in there," he said. "Your father brought counsel. Private. Expensive." I gave a humorless smile. Of course he did. He looked at me, like he wanted to say something else. Then handed me the folder. "Everything's lined up. Gina pulled every transaction through federal records. You've got signatures, timestamps, and half a dozen files with your military ID attached to operations you never authorized. The judge will see it." I took the folder. My hands were steady. "Let's go," I said. The room was quiet. My father sat at the far table, flanked by two attorneys in sharp suits. His hair was thinner now, his hands more brittle, but the eyes, those were the same. Cold. Measured. Like a man who still believed the world could be outmaneuvered. He didn't look at me. Not once. Melissa wasn't there. When I stepped up to speak, the judge asked if I wished to read a formal statement. I said no. I didn't want to read anything. I wanted to speak. So I did. "I served my country for 25 years," I began, voice calm but clear. "Not because I was told to, because I believed in something larger than myself. I missed weddings, birthdays, funerals. I watched friends die. I came home in pieces, quietly, like we're trained to." I looked at my father. Still no reaction. "And while I was gone," I continued, "my name was turned into a product, a tool, a shield for money laundering, fraud, and exploitation. My family didn't just erase me. They replaced me." I held up the documents. "These signatures are not mine. These operations were not mine. But the consequences could have been. A man died in Moldova under my name. A false company took federal money under my name. And when I came home, I was met with locked doors, legal threats, and silence." I paused. Then I walked to the evidence table and placed the folder down. Firm. But not anymore. The courtroom remained still as the judge reviewed the files. The attorneys whispered. My father finally looked up, just briefly. His expression was unreadable. Not regret, not shame, just calculation. He had gambled on my silence, and he lost. Weeks passed. The news broke. Investigations launched. Subpoenas were issued. The nonprofit web unraveled, each fake foundation tied to real government dollars, funneled through RH Consulting Group and its sister shells. Richard Hart was arrested. Melissa Hart vanished. But her cooperation, quietly shared with Agent Lawrence, became the nail in the coffin. She would face judgment too, eventually. The scandal made waves, not because of the amount stolen, but because of how. A family had weaponized patriotism, used a soldier's sacrifice as camouflage, and they almost got away with it. I didn't return to the motel after the trial. I went back to the house. Not to live, not yet, but to stand in the doorway, alone. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I walked the halls, touched the old railing, opened drawers that hadn't been opened in years. Inside one was a photo. Me in uniform. Younger. Smiling. Melissa beside me, laughing at something out of frame. Dad in the background, arms crossed, face hard as ever. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it back. And I walked outside. Months later, I got a letter. Typed. No return address. You could have burned us all down. You didn't. Maybe one day I'll understand why. I read it once. Folded it. Filed it away. Not for forgiveness. Not for closure. Just as proof that I wasn't the ghost they built. I was still here. They tried to erase me. But I learned something in war. Erase a soldier, and she becomes a shadow. Try to bury her, and she learns how to rise. And when she comes back, she doesn't knock. She enters. And that's how it ended. Not with revenge. Not with a perfect victory. But with the truth. Finally out in the open. Life doesn't always play fair. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who cut the deepest. But no matter how much they take from you, never let them take away who you are. I'm still standing, still fighting, still human. If this story spoke to you, if it made you feel something, subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to walk away from people you thought would never hurt you? On this channel, we share powerful stories of ordinary people who've survived the unthinkable, betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, and somehow found the strength to keep going. Because sometimes, the quietest voices carry the loudest truths, and I think the world needs to hear them.